A couple of things to keep in mind as we are going through these 6 practice problems with factoring and simplifying rational expressions. Um, First, when you're factoring, take out the GCF first. Write in standard form before factoring. And then also let me add to that that you want x squared to be positive. So you also want that to happen when you're factoring. You want to look for perfect squares or perfect cubes. And then when we get into the rational expressions, if you're multiplying or dividing, you don't need a common denominator. Adding or subtracting, you have to have a common denominator. And then remember that to divide, you do your keep, change, flip because it means to multiply by the reciprocal. Let's go ahead and get started with this first problem. And I didn't put the multiple choice answers on here, but you have them on that other paper. So which of the following is a factor of 10x squared plus 14x minus 2? The first thing we want to do is take out anything that they have in common. So I'm going to take out the GCF, which is 2, leaving us with 5x squared plus 7x minus 6. Then from here we do our a times c to get negative 30. We list our b term, which is 7. And in this case, two numbers that will multiply to give us a negative 30, add to give us a positive 7, would be a positive 10 and a negative 3. But then we need to divide by our a term. So we take our 10 divided by 5 and take our negative 3 and divide it by 5. And simplify if you can. The negative 3/5 you cannot, but 10 divided by 5 is 2. So I'm going to shift over here. Don't forget about this 2 you took out originally. And then this 2, you write your new factor of x plus 2. You keep the sign the same here. And then x minus 3/5. And then we need to do our slip and slide. We don't want fractions. So 2 times x plus 2 times 5x minus 3. Remember, your 5 from your denominator comes up here in front of your x. And so this is the fully factored form. This is completely done. And if you look at your answer choices, B is an answer because the factor is x plus 2. Now with number 2, remember that you want to take out your GCF, and this doesn't have any greatest common factor other than 1. However, all of these are perfect cubes. So since they are all perfect cubes, we need to use the form of, if we have a cubed plus b cubed, the way that you factor it is you turn it into a plus b times a squared minus ab plus b squared. And remember, this is your same, opposite, always positive. So to get our a and our b, we're going to take the cubed root of our numbers. So I'm going to start with the cubed root of 27x cubed, and this is going to be our a. And so that becomes 3x. Then I'm going to take the cubed root of the other term, so b is going to be our cubed root of 343y cubed, and that comes out to 7y. So now what we do is we take this and we fill it into this whole form right here to factor it. So in our first set of parentheses, we have a plus b, so a is 3x and b is 7y. And then in the second set of parentheses, we take our a and square it, so we get 9x squared. We subtract a times b, so 7 times 3 is 21xy. And then we add to that b squared, which when we square that, we get 49y squared. And then close your parentheses. And that is your fully factored form. You're totally done. And that would be answer D because it matches this second half right here. Now with number 3, you remember again to start with taking out the greatest common factor. And when you do that, you end up taking a 5 out, leaving you with 16x to the 6th minus 9y to the 4th. And now these are all perfect squares. And so since they are all perfect squares, we get to kind of just make this little skeleton and fill everything in. So we take the square root of 16, which is 4, and the square root of x to the 6th, which is x cubed. And we're going to put that in both spots first. Square root of 9, which is 3, and the square root of y to the 4th, which is y squared, and that goes in the second spot. And you have to make one positive and one negative because it's the only combination that will give you a negative number. And there is your factored answer. All right, now number 4, multiplication, so no common denominator, meaning you don't need it because it's just multiplying. So we're going to factor each expression individually, and then we'll start canceling things out. So I'll start with taking the 5 out of the 5x squared minus 20, leaving us with x squared minus 4. Now down here, I'm just going to factor it right into x, let's see, x plus 6, yep, and x minus 2. Over here, I'm going to just factor that right into x plus 6 times x plus 4. And over here, I am going to factor that into x plus 4 times x plus 2. And the only thing we have left is to factor that piece right there. So the 5 stays, and these are both perfect squares. So we make our little skeleton to fill it in, and it's 2x times x gives you x squared, 2 times 2 gives you 4, 1 positive, 1 negative. And then we have our denominator, x plus 6 times x minus 2. And then over here, x plus 6 times x plus 4. And that goes over x plus 4 times x plus 2. And now what you do is go through and cancel things out that are in common in the numerator and denominator. So you'll see you have an x plus 2 here and down here. So those cancel with one another. Then we have an x minus 2 here and an x minus 2 here. So we can cancel those out with one another. And then we have an x plus 6 here and an x plus 6 in the bottom as well. So we can cancel those. And we also have an x plus 4 on the top and on the bottom, which leaves us with our final answer of just the number 5. And we're done. Now with number 5, in this one, remember that I said you want to have it in standard form first. And because it is subtraction, so subtraction must have a common denominator. Okay, so I am going to only worry about the denominator right now. Let's just factor that and work from there. So 12 minus 3x squared over, and this is going to be x minus 3 times x plus 2 minus 3x plus 4 over, and I'm going to put this in parentheses because there's nothing we can do to factor that. It's totally done. Well, if we're looking at our denominator, this has an x minus 3, and so does this one. However, when we're looking at a common denominator, the x plus 2 needs to be here as well. So this first fraction doesn't even need to change at all. I'm going to just leave it as it is. But the second fraction needs to get an x plus 2. So I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by x plus 2, because really you're not changing anything, you're just changing the way that it looks because this is just the number 1. So over here we still have 12 minus 3x squared, which we can't do anything with, right? And then we have our x minus 3 times x plus 2 minus, now our numerator over here is 3x plus 4 times x plus 2 over x minus 3 times x plus 2. All right, so now you'll notice that the denominators match one another. So you look here, we have exactly the same thing in both denominators, so we're good. So we get to write just one fraction with one denominator. So one big fraction, and your denominator is x minus 3 times x plus 2. And I'm going to take everything from the numerator and put that here. So 12 minus 3x squared minus 3x plus 4 times x plus 2. And so now we just need to keep simplifying as much as we possibly can. So we need to FOIL this. So first outer, inner, last. So we get 12 minus 3x squared minus, this becomes 3x squared, plus 6x plus 4x, and then plus 8, all over this crazy business, x minus 3 times x plus 2. Now at this point right here, these two are just 10x, and then we need to distribute the negative to all three terms that come after the negative. So 12 minus 3x squared stays put, but now this becomes a negative 3x squared minus 10x, and then minus 8, all over x minus 3 times x plus 2. And continuing just a little bit further by combining our like terms, negative 6x squared, so that's combining these two, minus 10x, and then 12 minus 8 is 4. And we have our denominator. Now at this point here, it's probably a good idea just to check and make sure that you can't factor any further. So I'm going to take out a negative 2 because I know that everything is divisible by a negative 2 here, leaving us with 3x squared plus 5x minus 2 over x minus 3 times x plus 2. So if I were to try and factor this numerator just a little bit further and see if it has anything in common with the bottom. So I would do the a times c, which would give me a negative 6, and then b, which is a positive 5. So if we do 6 and negative 1, that would work. So we divide by our a term to get 2 and a negative 1/3. So when we write our factors from that, we get x plus 2 and x minus 1/3. So that leaves us with x plus 2 and then 3x minus 1. Well, you'll notice that this factor matches 1 in the denominator, so we do have to go further. So we now have negative 2 times x plus 2 times 3x minus 1 over x minus 3 times x plus 2. And our x plus 2's cancel with one another, and then leaving us finally, we're totally done, negative 2 times 3x minus 1 over x minus 3. So I know that it's a huge pain in the butt. It's really frustrating, but it'll make you really good at factoring by continuing to do this. All right, so number 6, I'm not going to go through this whole thing with you. I'm actually going to ask that you do this on your own. So do on your own. So I'm going to give you the answer so that way you can tell if you did it correctly. So remember to keep, change, flip when you're simplifying this. And then also, so your answer that you should get if you do this correctly is 2d plus 5 squared, so you should have 2 of those factors in your numerator, over 4d plus 1. So that's what you should get as your answer if you do it correctly.